It's, it's beer 30.
Okay, everybody, it's just another wonderful show coming to you live from beautiful downtown La Follette. Well, actually, we ain't downtown, and it ain't too beautiful. That's all right. We take
And here we are at your disposal.
Yeah, a lot of people want to dispose of it.
Yeah, disposal. They probably charge a disposal fee.
What's going on, Mr. R.L.?
Well, I've been trying to keep up with the latest on Ebola.
Well, now, I want to know if you realize that you don't have a new wheel tax.
We may not have the new wheel tax, but the intent was there.
Oh, yeah.
I
really like the idea of a wheel tax, and they're going to try to substitute a sales tax, which is the next best option if you're going to have taxes. But the reason I like wheel taxes is you can't buy them with food stamps. And you can avoid the sales tax.
With food stamps?
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You sure can.
And you pay no tax on.
There's no tax
food.
on.
But now you can't avoid the wheel tax, but they've outlawed that. That was too fair.
Yeah.
So what is the deal on the food, on the wheel tax? They think about rescinding it?
No, they ain't rescinding it. They said they did it illegally, and in fact, we've been paying a wheel tax for all these years, voted in illegally. And
well, could we bring they're so worried about a suit, you know, and that was one of the frailest, weakest excuse to raise taxes I have ever heard. If they can raise taxes from fear of being sued by people not getting a raise, then they ought to be able to lower taxes by people who are suing to keep from getting their income cut. I think we have a more legitimate excuse to sue as a taxpayer than those workers do as a recipient of tax paying.
Well, that's where it is, Bob.
Okay.
Well, now here's the thing about it. We gave all the county employees a raise. Now, I'm not against people taking more money if they can get it, but the fact is that I took, and I'm sure you did, and Bob did too, we took a cut in pay when they raised property taxes and wheel taxes. And I'm willing to bet, I'll bet $50 that I took more of a loss, and I took enough to pay at least one of those raises, maybe two or three. And I'll be willing to bet you at least the $50 that I'm paying somebody's raise, or was before they outlawed it, that every one of them is driving a newer car than I do.
I don't doubt that. In our situation, or mine and everybody else associated with the company, can you imagine what a wheel tax does to us?
It hits pretty good, didn't it?
Wow.
Well, it ain't gonna happen.
Well, yeah, it will. Come next time round, or
Ain't that a shame?
when they get to see, all this is revote this thing.
Mm-hmm.
All they got to do is revote it. You got somebody to make a motion, bring it up, and vote.
Well, you know, I hadn't thought about that, how much it hits you on wheel tax, and that ain't fair.
Well, I don't know. I couldn't even tell you the number right now because I don't know how many.
But it still is I think cut. And Cliff Jennings, I hate to be on his side, but I am.
But now, Cliff has not changed his spots.
He's just going with the right flow.
Cliff's going with the flow is what it is here. What he's done, you remember back when they voted the County Powers Act, there were certain members that knew how many votes they had.
Yeah.
And they knew they had enough votes to pass it. So that's where that went.
Well, that's the way I had Cliff figured too.
Yeah, that's bull.
But the rest of the story is, if they're going to raise taxes, the wheel tax will affect more people that don't pay tax any other way. But I don't see it. We don't. We just keep. First off, we keep pouring money into the school system. We don't ever quit because it's for the kids. And this is not the fault of the county or anybody local. It's state and federal. That's got to be the stupidest way to educate a young'un that's ever been come up with.
You're getting into a whole different subject
Mhm.
here. Whenever you get into education,
Yeah.
if you really look at education, it's a hoax. Education. Let's back up and go down to the very fundamentals of education. If you go back, ever how far you want to go back until we started the numerical system, 2 and 2 was 4. And I know it's been that way for at least 60 or 70 years. And Bob, I don't know how many years you can go back, but it's always been the same thing. Now, how is it that we have to pay so much more to have someone, and whenever we said education is nothing more, the way it is right now, is memorizing something that somebody has written down. Now, to me, to be educated, and I'm not going to go back to Snuffy's part of it, but to me, an educated person is a person who can come up with ideas that they haven't read somewhere. I'm talking about an idea that they can come up on their own or solve a problem. From what I'm seeing, when a student comes out of school, and I'm going to put it to whatever level you want, most of what they can regurgitate to you is something that they've already read, that's somebody printed in a book or printed somewhere. It's not their own ideas. It's very seldom you find anyone who has their own idea on anything.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. You know, I taught school for 9 years, taught high school for 9 years, and most of the courses that
I
I
was in high
taught,
school 9 years.
I was in there about 10, I believe.
most
No, I'll
of the-
take it back.
most of the courses that I taught were from books that really about anybody could have stayed a few pages ahead of the student and could have taught that particular subject if they had the basic background of understanding what was in that text. Take history. History is what it is, even though it has been manipulated a great deal for political purposes. But when you talk about the War of 1812, or you talk about the Civil War, or you talk about some other big epoch in history, you need someone that teaches that to have some clear understanding of why and what the consequences were. And
The problem with teaching history is we have a lot of indoctrination that goes along with it anymore.
yeah, like I say, history has been manipulated for political purposes. And you take one of my favorite presidents, you know, not that I really wasn't there, I was close, was Abraham Lincoln. But Abraham Lincoln did more to destroy the concept of republic and strengthened the presidency illegally almost as much as Barack Obama. And of course he used the excuse of a great civil war to do that, and of course Obama uses a lot of excuse to go outside of the Constitution to do what he's been doing. But I agree with you on education. There are so many more viable ways of teaching kids nowadays.
Just now, while we were talking and I'm finished, I pulled up several sources where I could teach myself arithmetic from primer through 12th grade right online.
Right.
Now, I know that would need a little guidance when you were talking about beginning, but there's no reason for anybody not to be educated if they have access to the internet and they're willing to learn.
Right. I agree with that. And like I say, there's so many viable ways of teaching nowadays and bringing it to the young people and the old people. There's no reason why they can't be educated more than what they are through the use of a computer, through the use of being online. There's so many avenues are open to us now, but yet we let our education system continue to drain us dry of funds and not change.
Yeah. What we should be doing, the education, the school system should only be there now to create curiosity so that you will go to the resources that you have. We don't need to be wasting our money to educate people that don't want to be educated in the first place. We need to give them every incentive we can to seek an education. We need to encourage them. We need to show them the alternatives. And then if they just want to be a bum, then let them be a bum. But if we will cut off some of their funding sources, there'll be a lot more of them decide they want to find out something rather than starve. But pure starvation has always been a motivating factor.
That's what I say about a lot of government programs. If you cut the funding out, they're going to find a different way of doing it.
That's correct.
And whether it be education or whether it be social
as
services.
As you subsidize unemployment, you'll have unemployed people.
Exactly right. See, it's so entrenched now that the educational institution has become a babysitter, is what it's become.
That's all it is.
It's a babysitter.
But it would be a whole lot cheaper to have some daycare facilities than it is to pay people who consider themselves professional instructors and actually are dumber than the kids are teaching. And I don't mean that in a coverall fashion. There are some dumb people out there that call themselves teachers. And there's some very educated people out there that are underpaid, but they're in the wrong field.
It's very, very, very true. You know, you got, sometimes you do, in all honesty, have dumb and dumber teaching your children. And it's not fair to the children. It's not fair to the people, the taxpayers that are funding this operation. Education needs to change. It needs to come into the 21st century.
Yeah, you keep hearing about driving your car into the 21st century. You need to drag a few things along with you, like the institution of education right now. But we ain't gonna change that. That's a little bit beyond our.
I can take a computer. I can take a warm house in the winter and a cool house in the summer with restroom facilities, and I could teach a bunch of kids for practically nothing that would outperform anything that comes out of the public high school.
I agree with that. I agree.
On math or science or whatever. I know that maybe you don't have the laboratories for the experiments, but you know, it's kind of like they had the little kid in the science lab, and the teacher was trying to teach him the badness of drinking alcohol. So this is the one where she dropped the two worms in the glass of bourbon or something, you know, and the worms curled up and died. And she said, "Now, Johnny, what does that teach you?" He said, "If you got worms, drink bourbon."
There you go. Our school system, and I hesitate, I think there ought to be a better word than education system to apply to it.
Well, the problem is anytime you suggest a change or something, some people take it as a personal attack on them. We're not attacking school teachers. They're doing what they're hired to do. They're hired to do the wrong thing.
They're doing what has been sent down, and it comes all the way from the government. From I believe we have a federal education czar or whatever you want to call it, but it comes down from the top down to the state. And what our students are taught is determined by a group of other people. I don't know, and I hesitate to say educated people. The way I see it, everybody out here in society is actually a teacher. And when I say that, I'm saying that you're always, someone is watching you, watching what you do and how you do it, or they should be. And an example, when I first started doing into the concrete business, I was very careful. I watched how people did it whenever they like placing and finishing, and everybody has got their way of doing things. But if you'll watch, you can pick out the good ways and the easy ways, and if you'll combine that all together, you can take the work out of the stuff. And there's some people out there, some crews, that you would not believe how well that they work. They'll go out there and they'll kind of act a fool a little bit, but whenever it comes to working, one does not have to tell the other one what to do. And they kind of like, you might say, a well-working machine, if you won't call people machines, but they get the job done and they do it right at the least amount of effort. And this is something I learned from them. But I've also got an opinion, and I learned this in mechanical work. The guy who is the helper actually needs to know more, or at least as much or more than the guy that's doing the job.
He got to be ready for the guy that needs something and anticipate it and have it ready.
That's right. He needs to be a step or two ahead of whoever's doing the work, which makes good sense when you stop to think about it. But anyhow, whenever we're getting back to the basics of education, I know that instructors or whatever, everybody's got to make money, live at a certain level or whatever else. But when I go out here in the morning with a piece of equipment, that machine has to be lubed, fueled, everything on the sun has to be done to it. At the end of the day, you've got to be sure that you do these things to it.
Have it ready to go next day.
Right. In education, I go back to that 2 plus 2. Does an educator have to go get refueled up every night? Does he have to get re-educated? Or does whenever he gives that knowledge to someone, does he have to go get refueled on knowledge?
Maybe energy, but not knowledge.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Whenever there's a lot of occupations out there that whenever somebody walks into the morning, all they bring with them is what knowledge they've got, and it's the same knowledge over and over. Now,
well, one of the problems you have in a lot of school systems is that you have a group of kids that are so much ahead of others. Then you got some in the middle, then you got some that are way behind.
That's true.
It seems in our educational system, especially I've seen this here in Campbell County, they always work with those that are ahead, and maybe a little bit filters down to those that are just average. But those that are on the bottom spectrum, they don't get anything.
Well, I can identify with that, because when I was in school, I had problems. I'm talking about I was a discipline problem, and it wasn't due to the fact that I looked for trouble. It's just that I was so bored because I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand the lessons or anything else, and it was because of a learning disability.
Right.
And back then we had no identification for such things, but I always said if they'd looked at how I wrote my name on the outhouse, I wrote it backwards.
Well, my problem in high school was that, and I ain't saying this to be smart aleck or anything, but I didn't see anything that I wanted to learn. There wasn't. There was. I mean, it was all Mickey Mouse stuff.
Well, this is another problem that I had, and I don't know if other people have this same problem, but I could never see where I needed this stuff.
Well, that was me.
And
I finally came to one challenging course. I signed up for physics.
Well, let me give you.
And I didn't even learn physics.
Let me give you a little information that's factual to me. When I was in school, a rural community.
And back when they used them slates, wasn't it?
I can take you right now to a lot of my classmates, either before me or after me, or in the same grade with me, that I wrote all of their book reports for them. Okay, some of them are doctors. There's a doctor in that bunch. There's one at the last reunion, flew his own helicopter in. I wrote every book report he ever turned in.
He's what?
His own helicopter. He flew it into the reunion.
Oh.
And that takes some money just to fly one, just for the gas and everything, or fuel. Have another one that it has a doctorate degree, whose mother was a school teacher, and she graded his book reports that I wrote for him. I wrote every book report he ever made. There's one I can think of now.
Did you charge these people for this, Bob?
Yeah, I did
That's
charge.
What I thought.
You're an entrepreneur.
You know I did. But what I'm saying, I didn't see anything particular that I needed to learn. I already knew about Beowulf, and I already knew about Chanticleer, and I already read about all those things before they ever come up in school.
Well, you must have led a very boring childhood if you wanted to read about Beowulf.
Well, when I say I knew about it, it was not my favorite reading, but I was acquainted with it, and
what about Grendel? Did you read about Grendel too?
Oh yeah,
okay.
yeah, sure did. And,
somebody had to get a hold of Beowulf.
See, my dad worked for the Southern Railway, and there was always a lot of damaged stuff that he bought off the insurance companies after the insurance gets paid off, where there were just bushel baskets and cardboard boxes full of books and books and books
Yeah,
and books.
something we couldn't get when I was growing up. I wasn't a bookstore in this county.
Right.
And I had a law, but if I'd had then what we've got now, I'd have been real smart time I grew up.
But we just had books and books, and like I say, we had no TV. There was no such thing as TV. The radio ran off of a 6-volt battery, and you didn't only use that when the news was on, or maybe you got to listen to Amos and Andy, or you got to listen to The Shadow, you got to listen to The Lone Ranger, or Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy, some of those folks got to listen to, but basically, I was reading books.
Mm-hmm.
And
this is something that of course, as we get older, we try to instill in the young ones reading. And this was one of my big holdups, is I never could read. I'd always turn stuff around backwards, and I still have this trouble. I have it every day. I go to read a news article.
You
I
seem to have held you back too much.
Well, no, it didn't. I had another, I guess what you might say, I compensated or whatever, I don't know, I guess to a certain extent we're, I hate to say born with it, because we're not born with a whole lot of stuff.
Well, I consider you the best self-educated engineer I've ever met, and I've got another friend who I'm just always surprised at what he accomplishes, and he tells me he can't read, and I have read stuff he writes. You get an email from him, you just kind of have to interpret it. It's not, you don't read it, you interpret it, and the guy is absolutely brilliant. So you're right about that. One of the purposes of education would be to find people who don't think like the rest of us, and help them help them learn to learn from what we've accumulated. Don't mean that you're wrong. Maybe we're doing it wrong.
The what you stated right there is one of the key things, is the ability to know how to learn. Learn how to learn. And that's very important. Myself, we're motivated by certain things, and I think by not having things, when I came up, I didn't have anything. I can't remember my parents ever giving me a nickel for anything.
There was no money at our house either.
That's right. You always figured out how to do it. And I can remember when Dad brought in, when I was about 5-year-old, he brought in a tricycle out of the junk. And I can still remember trying to put it together, and I did. I put it together and put the wheels and whatever, and there was some bolts missing or whatever. But I can still remember doing it. And back then, if you wanted something, you didn't go say, "Hey, Daddy, I want this. It's Christmas, my birthday or something." If you wanted something, you figured out how to either make it, work earn the whatever.
Right.
And my mom once told me I was wanting something that may have been a BB gun or something. I can't remember
I never
exactly.
will forget that first family of mine. My wife says, "Why don't you go out there and help that boy on that bicycle?" I said, "Look," I said, "he's got $200 worth of craftsman tools out there surrounded that bicycle." I said, "I'm gonna let him figure it out himself." And he did back then. Craftsman tools were high priced even back then. Like
Oh yeah, about like
50
snap-ons.
years ago. Huh?
About like a snap-on.
Yeah. And but he was out there, and eventually, if he really got stumped and he tried and he couldn't figure something out, I'd go out there and help him.
Who?
Huh?
Who?
My boy.
Okay. You fellers get to needing something to warm you up because it's going to start turning cold, and you go down there in the middle of the road, right in the middle of the road, and Sawmill Holler.
Yeah, you got to figure that one out too now when you go down there.
Yeah, especially pack a lunch and go down and talk to Digger. Get you some propane. He's got all different flavors and varieties and colors. Propane comes in different
Whatever flavor you get,
or color.
that tank will be full. It will be purged. Most places don't purge their tanks. You pull up, it could have volume-wise, it could have right much air in there, moisture or whatever. They don't purge it. They just put in there what it'll hold, and you go on your merry way. But Digger purges every tank he fills, so when you go out there, it's full of propane.
562
5444.
5444 Digger's propane.
Right, and also he's got some of them good tickets to the Shrine Circus coming up this coming weekend. That's the 17th, 18th, and 19th. The Shrine Circus is at 7 o'clock on Friday. Saturday they have a show at 1 o'clock and at 7 o'clock, and this is in the Thompson Bowling Arena in Knoxville, Tennessee. And then on Sunday they also have a 1 o'clock and a 7 o'clock show. And Digger's got some complimentary tickets for the young'uns.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now what?
We'll get back on this subject again one of these days, but right now, if we get back to the most serious thing that I see going on right now, it's this Ebola situation. And what I've heard, first of all, I heard the president, and there's a clip that's been showed several times on the news, and the president's telling us that it's awful hard to get Ebola, that you can...
You need to let him start treating patients.
Well, he's also said you can keep your doctor and everything else. I mean, I've got to the point, and I think the general public has got to the point that they don't believe much of anything he says. But anyhow, this clip, and he says it, you can't get it by casual contact. Said you can ride a bus. So if I'm right in my thinking, if you can ride a bus, sit down beside somebody and whatever else, and cannot contract it that way, then you can ride an airplane, or you can ride any type of public transportation and never become infected, according to what was said. And I'm just going by what he said. All right? Now, I want you to explain something to me. Now, I heard something else too. They said that this Ebola virus can only live for about 4 hours without a host. In other words, if it goes out here on a solid surface, a door handle or anything, or an airplane, it cannot last, it can't survive over 4 hours. Now this goes back to the CDC, and I don't think they're telling us the truth. And the reason for that is, if this Ebola virus can only survive 4 hours without a host, you got this airplane comes in, and it's got a subject on there who is infected. Here comes these guys in with their suits, and they take him off or whatever. But then they come in and they rub this thing down all over. Why don't they just park that jet for 4 hours or 8 hours and let this virus decease? Let it go away.
We're not spending money that way.
Well, but now here's what I'm trying to get. The nurse that they first said did not follow protocol is the reason that she became infected. Now I heard, and I can't prove this, but I heard that she, while tending to the guy Duncan, that all she had on was a hospital gown and what we would call a dust mask, like you use out here if you mow in your yard, and a face shield, like what we use if we're grinding, just a clear face shield. Okay? Now that's what I heard, and I can't prove it or not, and if such is the fact, I'm guaranteed they'll cover it up. But before I heard that, the thought come to me, this lady, this nurse, fully equipped, yet she becomes infected. The first thing that crossed my mind, and I never heard anything said about this, who guarantees this, and I call it a monkey suit. How do you know that this monkey suit did not fail? It did not have a hole in it. And these type things.
What bothers me is that 230-something people have died this year from Ebola who happen to be trained professional healthcare workers.
They're saying
out of about 4,000. So you're looking at 1 in 5.
Well,
about what? I had all this figured out.
Well, the last count I had, that of those who have succumbed to this and died from it, that 25% of them were caregivers. Now, I'm not talking about professional, but I'm talking about people who have give assistance to other people.
I think you get down to people who are actually supposed to be trained, you're getting a pretty high percentage of those people that are catching it.
Right.
And I'm not worried about catching it from you two guys.
No.
But if I were doing a lot of flying around the country, I'd be a little concerned.
Well, I'm concerned about the fact that there's really no security getting on the plane. All the security is getting those who have already got on the plane and arrived at their destination.
You know what ended World War I?
What?
Yeah, influenza.
The American troops took influenza to Europe and won the war.
Right.
We've sent 3,000 people to Ebola-infected areas. What are they going to do? They're going to come home.
Well, you know, you just think, if I were in Liberia and I knew I had been exposed to Ebola, the first thing I would do is book passage to the United States. Now, would I answer, they give them a questionnaire, have you been exposed to Ebola? Hell no. You know, I mean...
that's what this Duncan guy did.
That's I would just lie right up and down the list, and then just as soon as I disembarked and wherever I was at, I'd say, hey, I've been exposed to Ebola. Put me in the hospital. And that's what they do.
This is basically what this person Duncan, in my opinion, did.
No, you can't blame him.
Well,
no, I don't blame
him. He's still dead.
I'll tell you. Well, as far as blaming him, I guess you'd have to be in that situation to make that decision. But I think the decision that he made was, I guess the word I'd say would be probably selfish or lack of concern for his fellow man or something.
But if you live in Liberia and you know that everything's perfect and golden in America, then you're not going to think you're going to infect anybody else. You're just going to get yourself cured.
Let me go back to another one.
You have to make this one born here. It's a little bit joke, but you know, modern science has given us email. Has given us electronic cigarettes, e-cigarettes, and Africa has given us Ebola.
Well, we've got she-mails in the modern world too.
Right.
The my thinking on this thing is, no matter what we do, first of all, we don't have a vaccine. Seems to me like the only way we've got to deal with this is by keeping a person's liquids and keeping them hydrated. That seems to me like that's the only thing we're doing as far as treatment, except for the gentleman who is given, the doctor.
Experimental judge.
Well, he has given a blood transfusion, but I'm going to back up and say I'm not sure it was a blood transfusion. It may have been, there's another.
Plasma.
Well, it's kind of like plasma, or, yeah, okay, plasma. And I asked a lady who was in the medical part of this thing about plasma the other day. And she said that now, used to years ago, like on a battlefield type situation, plasma would be administered. It's not typed. It's like A, B, and whatever. It's not typed. But she says that they're typing it now. And of course in a battle type... Pardon?
Plasma?
Yeah.
Okay.
And see, she said at that time they didn't type it, but said they do now for some reason, and I didn't get into the details. But when I back up to this, the gentleman, the doctor who survived this, he can give a blood transfusion, I can't think of the name of it, but anyhow, whoever he gives a transfusion to must have the same blood type. You see what I'm saying? If he's given whole blood.
But would his transfusion give immunity from Ebola?
Well, the second person that he gave this to supposedly survived. And it has to do with something else in there rather than... They're going to the blood has to be separated somehow, because unless they were of the same blood type. Now, the last I heard, this nurse who has become infected is going to receive a transfusion from him also. So, it's
evidently they have the same blood type.
I believe the word was antigens that would have the antibiotic or antibody part of it rather than the whole blood, unless their blood's matched.
And they use a serum.
They
create a serum.
Okay.
Using the blood parts.
Right.
And they used to use what was it? Back when they were treating polio, back before they had Sabine and
okay.
The other, what's the other polio vaccine? Where it was? They used what do they call that? Albumin or something.
I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not either.
But it was a blood part, and they created a serum that
okay, I get
build up your immune
your
system
antigens or whatever
to that particular challenge.
Right.
And it was not a cure; it was just a kind of
get you kicked off to where that you could do it yourself. But what caught my eye last night on the news? Okay, let me back up and say this. Now, this NBC News crew that has a member, there was a doctor.
Nancy Snyderman.
Okay, did you hear what she did?
Yeah, she went and got some soup.
Yeah, she was under quarantine, voluntary quarantine. Her and somebody else that was in the crew put on sunglasses to where they could be incognito, disguise themselves or whatever.
Was this guy that was with her part of the crew too?
Yeah.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah, they was a couple of them went down to a local eatery to get them a bowl of soup. Now, this is, being a doctor would be considered a professional doing a trick like this.
Well, here's the thing. She probably is 100% sure that she does not have it and she's not contagious, but that's not the point.
That's not the point.
The point is that if we're going to do this, the same for the lesser of us is for the elite.
Okay.
It's that problem. It says I don't have it and I know I don't. It spreads it to people that are just innocent.
How can she say 100%
because she's smart. She's a doctor and she knows more than we do.
When I saw her on the news out there, she had no protection whatsoever, it appeared to me. Now, I don't know whose residence it was, but they had this guy, and I call it a monkey suit. There's a fancy word, and I should know what it is, but I don't bother with it. He's going up the sidewalk, spraying the sidewalk with must be a chlorine or disinfectant or whatever. But this is what made me think about the 4R. And this goes back to the CDC. I don't feel is telling us the whole truth and about the thing, but I guarantee you it took that guy more than 4 hours to get to that. By the time it took him to get his suit on, get all of his stuff and travel and get there and spray that sidewalk, if what they was telling us was true, they didn't have to do that. Just box that house off, and it's like the guy who passed away, the Duncan guy. If that virus cannot live without a host, then why go in there and strip that house out? Why not just put a ribbon around it?
Let me ask something. Would the sidewalk wouldn't be a host?
Well,
it's going to pass on in 4 hours.
That's correct. That's why I'm saying, if they're telling us the truth and it can only survive 4 hours, why are they doing that? My thought on the matter is that it can survive a whole lot longer than any 4 hours.
That's
without
government.
A host.
That's government. It's just like when you have a fender bender out here with no cars are drivable, nobody's injured. Why would the government send 2 fire trucks, an ambulance, a fire marshal, and 2 or 3 police officers to that one accident?
What that is, that's where we have come to as a society. Let me back up and say something else here. The CDC, government, or whoever you want to call it, may be very, very concerned whenever they say a panic. And once I get to thinking about the general public out here, and I see the, and I ain't going to call it the educational level, I'm going to call it some other kind of level of thinking or whatever, maybe they're right. Maybe they don't want to, if the public gets frightened and they panic, there's no telling where the country will go to if they panic.
Well, let me ask you something. Let's forward this a little bit. What would happen if they did panic?
Well, in my opinion, the first thing that people do when they panic is they would loot everything that they once looting started.
Well, they do that without Ebola.
But it would be an excuse. And I've always said that looting is one of the dumbest things that ever happened, because if you go up here and loot your local grocery store, you're going to eat good for maybe a day or two, but then whoever runs that grocery store is not going to come back there and restock it.
That's like eating your seed corn.
That's right, eating your seed corn. They're not going to come back and restock it. After you clean it out, they're going to say to heck with it. They'd be dumb to send another to restock it.
Now let me ask you something. If Ebola was rampant in this area, would you loot the grocery store?
No, I wouldn't. I don't believe it would.
Would you loot the grocery store, Ronnie?
I ain't gonna loot nobody.
I don't think that's.
I wouldn't either. Now,
no. Well,
it seems like our entire effort and action that we take in this country is aimed at those people who have no common sense to start with.
Good point. There's if you stop and think about it, Bob, we, and I'm talking about the 3 of us here and several other people in this area, can survive. I'm talking about pretty much on their own. I'm talking about where they don't have to fight all of the larger percentage of the population. You know what I'm saying? In other words, like yourself, you've probably got enough laid back to where tomorrow.
He got stacked away. He
got
stacked away in caves and everything.
But let's say
you're a fool if you ain't got something put up.
That's right. Let's say that I have enough water supply to last me for a month. All right. Let's say the guy down the road here, he said the heck with it. I'll just go take it from somebody else. That means that I would have to defend it.
Right, exactly.
You know,
That's one of the problems that survivalists, and I read a lot of those magazines. I'm not really a member of survivalists, but I realize that first thing you do is protect yourself.
Well,
okay.
Let's say that you let's call this society a ship, a boat out here floating, okay, in the ocean, and the thing is loaded pretty much to its maximum. Let's say that out of the 100% of the people on board, you got less than 50% of these people who are rowing and a bailing water. And you got the rest of them sitting out there that ain't going to bail water, ain't going to row. And I'm not talking about the people who can't. I'm talking about the 30 or 40% on board who are perfectly capable and able to do but won't. All right? This boat's going to sink without you do something. Somebody's going to have to go overboard. Do you throw the people overboard who are doing the bailing water and rowing
Probably.
Well, then, or else do you stay where you're at? You can't bail the water.
Right.
Does everybody sink with it?
Right.
Now, these are hard things. And I'm kind of using them as a, I don't know what kind of word you'd use it, but anyhow, how about that? I like that. This is kind of where this country's at.
Tell them about Vitacare, and then I won't say no more.
Go
I thought I'd get your attention there by permanent match. What do you know about Vitacare, Bob? You had any experience with them?
I can tell you they are the tomato juice rescue king. I came down with food poisoning, and I got hurting so bad I don't think I could have driven myself to the hospital, really. I didn't want to try because I had the number 562-9370 for Vitacare. And I called Vitacare, and they immediately came, put me on a gurney, checked my temperature and my blood pressure and everything, and wheeled me out and carried me to the hospital, and I spent 5 days there because of food poisoning. If you need quality medical transportation, you can't do any better than Vitacare. They got 40-some years of experience, up-to-date equipment, knowledge of what to do, and their intent is to please you and to do a good job because it's not a government operation. They depend solely on their customers, and it does not cost anybody tax money or anything for them to handle your medical transportation system.
562-9370. And excuse me for interrupting, sir. You carry on.
Let's go back to discussing this Ebola. If Ebola originated somewhere, and from the research that I've done, they do not know exactly where it originated. But wherever it originated from, it is still being produced most likely from the origin. The thought on it was that it came from bats in a cave, possibly from the bat droppings or whatever else, but anyhow the bats were infected with it. All right? The bats may not succumb to it. They may only be a carrier of it. Then the bat infected the monkeys. They bite the monkey or whatever, so it may be a vampire bat, a small one of some kind or something. But anyhow, the people of Africa, the monkeys, the jungle monkey and whatever, is a source of food. Okay? When they dress the monkey out, right there you're in contact with the virus if it's in the blood. Then if it's consumed, if it's not properly cooked, but still yet, even if it's properly cooked, just in the dressing out of it would spread it. But if you do not stop the source of it, if you don't discover exactly where it comes from, there's no way you're ever going to be able to contain it. Because every time you think you've got it contained, it's kind of like a forest fire and a wind blowing. It's going to start up somewhere else. And
Well, now my theory on that is, you naturally need to discover the source, and if you can, take care of the problem at the source.
right,
But since this is a local problem, it was kind of like AIDS. AIDS
right,
supposedly came from somewhat the same situation, from monkeys,
right,
and it was brought over by international travel. I hate to say it, but this queer airline steward was
Right.
supposedly the one that brought it into this country in the 80s.
right.
And
Okay.
we
Well,
we really discovered that AIDS was not a general population problem.
still yet. See, now AIDS, we've been lucky about it by it not being transmitted by air. But now, I'll tell you a little something I saw the other day, and I make a little joke about it. I was in an emergency room last Saturday and took a family member there. But anyhow, while in the emergency room, I saw a fly. I've never seen a fly in a hospital, but here was a fly in the emergency room. So I tried to have a conversation with him, and he wouldn't talk to me, though. That's the joke
Right.
part of it, of course.
Right.
But in Africa, they say this is not, or anywhere you want to go, a fly can transfer anything of that type of a virus or whatever. If he can pick it up, you have a victim there, and this is a hemorrhagic virus, of course. If it wasn't, it may not be so bad. But anyhow, when that fly makes contact with any body fluids, be it vomit or secretions or blood, either one, when he comes in contact with that, he becomes a carrier. All right, a fly, I don't know how far one can go, but and if this virus can live, they say 4 hours, but I'm going to say it can live a lot longer. But a fly could be considered a host, most likely.
Yeah.
All right, that fly goes over here and lights on something else, somebody.
Right.
Then you're going to spread this thing worse than a sneeze ever thought about.
Right.
You can only sneeze. You can't sneeze 300, 400, 500 yards.
You can't sneeze from one continent to the other.
That's correct. But anyhow, not only flies, mosquitoes could transmit it.
Right.
So this thing concerns me more than about anything we've run into in a long time.
Well, one of the things that concerns me, we're letting all these people come into this country across our southern borders without any health checks or anything else. In fact, 500 some of them were picked up and brought and placed into the state of Tennessee.
900.
900.
900, yeah. We've got 900. That was the last count.
Right.
Now, we don't know how many. That's been,
Right.
what, 2 months ago?
Strangely enough, they've had this here children's virus. It's been,
Right.
Yeah.
it was kind of, I don't know.
E-tro.
I'm not sure I know how that happened. You got any idea?
Yeah, you know how that happened. You've got that virus that was discovered back in '68, and then all of a sudden that this virus shows up in so many different locations all in one time.
Strange,
A virus, if it had originated in one location, it wouldn't cover the United States. And I'm talking about if you introduced it in any part of the United States, it would spread from that point. This popped up everywhere.
Well, what caused that?
I believe our uninvited guest from
No, I
south
think it-
of the border
Oh,
had
you
something
know
to
that
do with
wouldn't
it.
be true.
I think
Now-
it had something to do with,
Dude,
the
you know-
Global warming.
space shuttle.
Global
You
warming.
know, we have
Global
brought
warming.
a group of
Sure.
children in here who probably have never used a toothbrush in their life or toilet paper. They're not familiar with those items of personal hygiene.
Well, where they contained the people that gave themselves up and that they arrested or took in, down in Texas, the people who were the caretakers there, I heard was being paid $1,000 a day to care for these unaccompanied guests from south of the border. You can't call them illegal aliens.
Not per child.
No, each caretaker
Right.
was paid $1,000 a day.
Right.
But
I could
part
go
of
down and work a week or two and get out of debt.
But one of the stipulations was they were not allowed to photograph or talk or anything, and they took their cell phones
Right.
when they would go into these places.
Right.
So that tells you that there's something there that the general public, and when I say government is a cover-all word for the people who we elect or we vote,
Right.
and they steal the election or ever how
Right.
they get into a position of authority.
Still the election.
No, yeah, 110% of a voter. But anyhow, whenever you say government, you're saying the people who are in charge. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we had a senator went down to look, and
That
he was not even
Senator
allowed.
McCain. Yeah, old senile McCain, they wouldn't even let him in.
That's right. He was not allowed into the facilities. So this kind of tells you we can believe this thing about
Well, they might
free
have caught
country.
stupidity off of him.
Well, I'm not going to vouch for his
Well, not
intelligence, but
stupidity,
still yet.
maybe just lack of character.
Well,
Can you catch
no, I'm
that?
not arguing with it. I'm not arguing with that because stupidity and ignorance and I don't know what all you call it. There's all kinds of words to use to describe. But still yet, when the people in charge do not want the citizens to know what's going on, just in this thing right here, and a dozen other things that we can name off here, our country's in a bad situation.
Right. Well, you
and-
know, was it Jefferson that said, when the government fears the people, you have democracy. When the people fear the government, you have tyranny.
Well, I feel myself, there's very few things I fear, but I'm concerned as to where our country has gone. I think we're gone to wherever, and I'm pessimistic about a lot of things that I don't even want to discuss in public.
Well, the people who are running this country have no faith in the American system.
They
They feel like we're just like everybody else, and as a result, everybody else ought to come here and do whatever they want to.
Well, big thing is we have been, and I mean we, especially the younger you are, the more you can attribute it to that. We have been handed a pretty good hand. We've got probably the highest living standard the world has ever known.
Right.
And we don't realize how it got here. We don't realize you have to protect it and take care of it and keep adding to it. You think it's always going to be here, and it ain't. And we're not going to be here much longer either. So if you've got
Right.
something you want
And
to say.
also there, you know, we had natural resources which were used. One of the greatness of this country was built on the West Texas oil fields. And now we still have the ability to provide the energy we need to make this country as great as it's ever been. Far as we just don't have the willpower, we don't have the people in charge or the system to do it.
Well, Bob, we've got resources, natural resources, but the thing that we have really got that will counterbalance our resources and probably the value thereof is we've got a national debt that will probably just about wipe out everything that this country owns.
Every other deadbeat does, we'll just declare bankruptcy and go to the house.
Well, the people who hold our paper may not accept that. It's kind of like, they may be kind of like the mafia, only on a larger scale, that you don't go out and tell them, hey.
Well, do you know who we owe the largest amount of debt to?
The American people.
Yeah, the American
the
people.
Social Security system.
Right, and then we owe a considerable sum of money not only to Russia, China, Japan.
Yeah, but we owe most of it to the American people's Social Security system.
Mm-hmm.
40 seconds.
Right.
35.
Going.
Appreciate you folks. We'll see you Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock on WLAF 1450 or 100.9 FM.
Or UGTV.tv, back up running.
TV.tv.
See, folks.